Have you ever been in a situation where someone introduces themselves, you nod politely, maybe even repeat their name, and then just moments later, it's gone, completely blank. You recognize their face, you remember the conversation, but the name disappeared. If this sounds familiar, don't worry, you're not alone. Forgetting names is one of the most common memory complaints in the world, and surprisingly, it has very little to do with having a bad memory. Instead, it's deeply connected to how your brain processes information, especially in social situations. To understand why we forget names so quickly, we first need to understand how memory actually works. Our brain is constantly receiving information, sights, sounds, emotions, words all at the same time. But it doesn't treat everything equally. It filters, prioritizes, and decides what is important enough to store. This process is called encoding. When you meet someone new, your brain is doing a lot of work at once. You're observing their face, their body language, their tone of voice. At the same time, you might be thinking, what should I say next? Do I look confident? Am I making a good impression? All of this mental activity takes up your attention. And here's the key point. Attention is limited. If your attention is divided, the brain doesn't properly encode the information, especially something like a name, which already doesn't have strong meaning attached to it. So even though you heard the name, your brain didn't fully register it. That's why, seconds later, it feels like the name was never there at all. Now let's talk about another important factor. Names are abstract. Think about it. When you see a face, your brain processes visual details, eyes, expressions, features. These are concrete and easier to remember. But a name like Ali, Sarah, or John doesn't give your brain much to work with. It's just a label with no strong image or emotional connection attached. Because of this, names are harder to store in memory compared to faces or stories. This is also why you might remember exactly what someone said, what they were wearing, or how you felt during the conversation, but still forget their name. Another powerful reason behind forgetting names is something psychologists call cognitive load. Cognitive load refers to how much mental effort your brain is using at a given moment. When you're meeting new people, especially in busy environments like events, offices, or gatherings, your cognitive load is already high. You're processing multiple conversations, background noise, social expectations, and your own internal thoughts. In that moment, your brain is overloaded, and when the brain is overloaded, it starts dropping less important information. Unfortunately, names often fall into that category. Let's make this even more relatable. Imagine you're at a wedding. You're meeting several new people one after another. Each person introduces themselves, and you smile, shake hands, and try to keep up. But by the time you meet the third or fourth person, the names of the first two are already fading. Why? Because your brain didn't get enough time to process and store each name properly. There was no repetition, no association, no pause to let the information settle. This leads us to another important concept, the forgetting curve. The forgetting curve explains how quickly we lose new information if we don't actively reinforce it. According to this idea, we can forget a large portion of new information within minutes or hours if it isn't revisited. So when you hear a name once and never use it again, your brain assumes it's not important and lets it go. Now, let's talk about something even deeper. Social anxiety and self-focus. When meeting someone new, many people become highly self-aware. They start thinking about how they look, how they sound, and whether they're being judged. This internal focus takes attention away from external details, like the other person's name. In simple words, when you're too focused on yourself, you're less focused on remembering others. This doesn't mean you're careless or rude. It simply means your brain is prioritizing emotional safety over memory. Interestingly, research suggests that people who are more socially anxious are more likely to forget names, not because they don't care, but because their attention is divided. There's also a psychological effect known as shallow processing. When we hear a name but don't do anything with it, like repeating it, visualizing it, or connecting it to something, the brain processes it at a shallow level, and shallow memories don't last long. On the other hand, deeper processing, like associating a name with a face, a story, or an image, creates stronger memory connections. For example, if you meet someone named Rose and imagine a flower, your brain now has a visual anchor. This makes the name easier to remember later. But in most real-life situations, we don't do this. We hear the name, nod, and move on. That's why it disappears so quickly. Another interesting factor is lack of personal relevance. Your brain is naturally designed to remember things that matter to you. If a person doesn't feel important or relevant at that moment, Your brain may not prioritize remembering their name. This doesn't mean you don't respect them. It just means your brain is selective. Think about it. You're more likely to remember the name of someone who made you laugh, impressed you, or triggered a strong emotion. That's because emotions strengthen memory. In contrast, neutral or ordinary interactions don't leave a strong imprint. So far, we've seen that forgetting names is not random. It's influenced by attention, cognitive load, emotional state, and the way information is processed. And here's the most important takeaway from all of this. Forgetting names is not a sign of weak intelligence. It's a natural result of how the human brain works. In fact, many highly intelligent and successful people struggle with remembering names. Their brains are often busy focusing on ideas, patterns, or deeper conversations rather than simple labels. So if you've ever felt embarrassed about forgetting someone's name, it's time to let go of that guilt. You're not bad with names. Your brain just needs the right conditions to remember them. Now that we understand why our brains forget names so quickly, the next question is, can we fix it? The answer is yes, but not by forcing your memory. Instead, the key is to work with your brain, not against it. Let's start with the most powerful technique, paying intentional attention. When someone introduces themselves, pause for a moment. Instead of just hearing the name, focus on it. This means making a conscious effort to listen. Look at the person, clear your mind for a second, and treat that name as important information. It sounds simple, but this small shift can dramatically improve memory. Remember, if information is not properly encoded, it cannot be recalled later. Next comes a very effective trick. Repeat the name immediately. For example, if someone says, "Hi, I'm Ahmed," you can respond with, "Nice to meet you, Ahmed." This repetition tells your brain, this matters. It also strengthens the neural connection associated with that name. Even better, try to use the name again during the conversation, but keep it natural. Overusing it can sound awkward. Another powerful strategy is association. As we discussed earlier, names are abstract. To make them easier to remember, connect them with something familiar. This could be a visual image, a known person, or even a rhyme. For instance, if someone's name is Noor, you might imagine light. If you meet Bilal, you might connect it to someone you already know with the same name. These mental links give your brain something concrete. Then there's visualization, which is one of the strongest memory tools. When you hear a name, create a mental picture related to it. The more unusual or vivid the image, the better. For example, if someone's name is Rose, imagine a bright red rose next to their face. This may sound silly, but the brain loves visual and emotional details. They stick much longer than plain words. Another important method is asking questions. When you engage with someone about their name, you naturally repeat and reinforce it. You could ask, "That's an interesting name. What does it mean? How do you spell your name?" This not only helps memory, but also shows genuine interest, which strengthens social connection. Now let's talk about slowing down. In today's fast-paced world, we rush through introductions without giving our brain time to process. But memory needs a moment to settle. When you meet someone, take a brief pause. Let the name sink in. Even a few seconds of mindful attention can make a huge difference. Another key factor is reducing internal distractions. Self-conscious thoughts often interfere with memory. Instead of worrying about how you're being perceived, shift your focus outward. Listen actively. Observe the person. Be present. When your attention is fully on the other person, your brain naturally captures more details, including their name. Now here's something interesting. Writing things down. If you're meeting multiple people, don't hesitate to make quick notes afterward. Even typing a name with a small detail can help. For example, Ali works in marketing. Met at conference. This creates context. Let's also address a common mistake, pretending you remember. When you don't, many people feel embarrassed to ask again. But this actually makes things worse. If you forget someone's name, it's completely okay to ask again politely. Most people understand. You can say, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name properly earlier." This honesty clears confusion and gives your brain a second chance. Another technique is linking the name to emotion. Emotional experiences are easier to remember. Notice something unique about the interaction. Did the person make you laugh? Did they share an interesting story? Attach the name to that moment. This creates a stronger memory trace. Now let's talk about practice and consistency. Like any skill, remembering names improves with practice. The more you apply these, the more natural they become. At first, it might feel like extra effort, but over time, your brain adapts. You start remembering names without even trying too hard. It becomes automatic. There's also something important. You don't need a perfect memory. Improvement, not perfection, is the goal. Memory is not about storing everything. It's about storing what matters in a way that's useful. And finally, let's shift your mindset. Instead of saying, "I'm bad with names," try saying, "I'm learning to remember names better." This small change opens the door for growth, because the truth is, your brain is capable. It just needs the right approach. To sum it all up, you forget names not because you're careless, but because of how attention, memory, and emotions work together. But you can fix it. Pay focused attention, repeat the name, create associations, visualize, and stay present. You give your brain exactly what it needs. Over time, you start noticing names more. You recall them faster. You feel more confident in social situations. Remembering someone's name is more than a memory skill. It's a way of showing respect, building connection, and making people feel valued. So the next time you meet someone new, don't just hear their name, experience it, use it, and connect with it. That's the psychology of remembering. And now, it's a skill you can use every day.